Hey, welcome to the Plant Yourself podcast. I'm your host, Howie Jacobson. My day job is as a coach, helping people live better lives. I coach executives and leaders, I coach entrepreneurs, and I coach civilians who are looking to improve their lives, their health, their relationships. Basically, it allows me to do what I didn't think was possible, which is to help people completely erase bad habits and different ways of being, erase negative feelings and replace them with positive ones, rather than just help people develop new strategies to compete with the old ones or new thought patterns to debate the old thought patterns. And I'm looking for people to work with. And I have reduced my rates a lot so that I can just get as much practice in as I can. So I am going to raise them back up to my normal fees, but right now I just need a lot of practice and feedback, and I have teachers and mentors. So if you're interested in getting my best coaching, better than I've ever done, at a big discount, email me, hj@plantyourself.com. So let's get on with the show. Hey, welcome. This is going to be a mind-blowing conversation. My guest is Momma Kai, Cara Lynn Sanders, whom I met when I was teaching the coach training program, the plant-based coaching certification for Food Revolution Network. And Momma Kai was one of the students, and we hit it off. And I was just fascinated with her insights, her wisdom, her way of seeing problems as systems rather than blaming individuals. And we got together to talk about her mission to end homelessness. And what I didn't really realize until almost the time when the interview was upon us is that Momma Kai herself and her 7.5-year-old son are both currently unhoused and experiencing housing insecurity. And if you watch the YouTube video of the conversation, you'll see that the call was taking place in her car in the parking lot of a hotel where her son was sleeping. It was 7 a.m, East Coast time, where she lives. And at first, I just wanted to know what that's like. What are the challenges? To kind of help me humanize this issue. And then we quickly got into really deep understandings of what goes into making someone not just unhoused but homeless, and the difference in Momma Kai's mind between those two terms, and how we can help people both with the inside game of sort of weeding out some of the brain traumas and psychological traumas that people have gone through, and also policy issues, how the wider society can change our perspectives, our mental models, and our priorities to really help people so that the whole world can flourish. So I hope you really enjoy this conversation. Without further ado, Momma Kai Sanders, welcome to the Plant Yourself podcast.
Yay, thank you so much.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about your mission. So let's just start by having you share what it is.
Alrighty. Well, first of all, it's another amazing day in paradise. I got to make sure I say that.
That's your superpower tagline, huh?
That's my superpower tagline.
I could use a little bit of that because I actually have moved to what it's kind of paradise in many ways, but I can get up and just see the dog turd on the sidewalk and and do the truck blowing exhaust fumes, and I can totally forget that life is good. So I love that discipline of reminding myself another beautiful day in paradise.
Absolutely. You just got to put your own spin on it. But for me, it's another amazing day in paradise. I'm so honored to be able to speak with you today. Just a little bit of background about me. My given name is Cara Lynn Sanders. I didn't come into the world as a mama.
You've earned that one, huh?
I definitely earned that one. My nickname is Kai, but I tell people that my super shero name is Momma Kai because I found my superpowers being the mom of a young black male superhero. And so he is really the reason for everything that I do. I always wanted to be a mom, I feel like, because I was the oldest of six children growing up in my mom's home, five girls, one boy. So you can imagine the dynamics there.
Uh, Probably not.
That's probably a good thing, but there were a lot of hormones, let's just put it that way.
Okay.
And just recently, we've been on this incredible adventure through the perils of poverty, experiencing life unhoused, without stable housing. And I've watched him flourish. The name God gave him when I was pregnant is wisdom. And he told me it wasn't
Mm,
going to be for the things he would learn, but for the things he would teach. And so I've endeavored to not just be his first and best teacher, but his first and best student. And I've watched um, I've watched this young black male superhero flourish in the midst of adversity, and I wanted to know why. And so I got curious, and I've been taking classes, and last year I finished my parent coach training with the Jai Institute for Parenting. And when I learned about brain development, nervous system regulation, and then through more personal development, learned more about trauma, and through the plant-based coaching certification, which led me to the plant-based certification, coaching certification where we met, that added the element of nutrition and
mm,
understanding what's going on in our heads, what's going on in our bodies, and how are they connected. And so I'm in the midst of developing a program that's called How Does Your Garden Grow? It is to create homesteads for those who are unhoused and to provide not just physical services of having a home, but learning how to be at home within yourself by understanding how does the garden of your brain grow. Because nobody tells you that, and you don't have any control over that because it happens in the first 7 years of your life approximately. And so when they say your brain is like a sponge, it is literally, it's more like this field with fertile ground, and whatever seeds are thrown there grow.
mm,
And so many of us grow up and not know why we behave the way we do, why we choose the things we choose. And so in order to eliminate homelessness internally and externally, then people deserve the opportunity to know, how did your brain grow? What's in there, what needs to be weeded out, and what do you want to plant in its place.
mm. Wow, there's so much. I'm like the interviewer in me is like having a mini panic attack. Like, what question do I ask next? You set such a huge buffet. But I guess I want to start with, you said like this adventure in the through the perils of poverty. So a little part of my brain just exploded there. Like there's some contradictions that we need to unpack, right? You said you're unhoused.
Hmm.
So one of the reasons I was stuttering at the beginning is I don't even know the right terms. Like, is homeless not unhoused? So I want to kind of let you tell the story, but can you give us some background?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of different ways that you can describe people without stable housing. You can say unhoused, you can say homeless. I particularly use unhoused to describe me only because I feel at home with myself, and home is
Mm,
wherever me and my son are together. And so
mm,
that's why I don't use that we are homeless, that we are unhoused. But from the experiences that I've had, I see that there are a lot of people who are not at home with themselves and don't have a home to go home to. And so um, that helps. That's how I define being homeless. And so there are
mm.
some people who are homeless, who are without housing, that are at home with themselves. But there are a lot more who are not at home with a physical dwelling or within their own existence, you know? So that's how I use those words, those terms.
Gotcha. Can I ask you about your? your situation?
Yeah, absolutely. So about 4 years ago, um, my son and I returned to North Carolina thinking I had paternal support, and it was more conversation and not a lot of implementation. And so we ended up without stable housing and have kind of been on this experience of navigating the systems that exist to figure out how to become stable. And it was my personal spirit does not mesh well um with people who with feeling uncomfortable, with feeling with especially because I was struggling so much with just recognizing my own value, that I wasn't willing to allow other people to feel to I wasn't comfortable being in spaces where I felt like I was of less value. And so I hesitate with the words I use because we spend so much time placing blame on other people for the way they make us feel, but people can't make us
Mm.
feel any kind of way. We get to choose that. And so I try to take responsibility for the feelings that I was having, recognizing that the actions of other people can spark something within you, but then you have to develop the means of saying, okay, I'm feeling some kind of way about that. What is the feeling and what is the need behind that feeling? And so there was
Uh-huh.
simply a need to feel respected despite my financial situation, and I didn't feel that. And so
Mm.
as
Meaning,
I've
meaning navigating the systems that are supposedly set up to help.
they don't very well. You have to very much submit yourself, and you
Hmm.
may not get the help that you actually need. You will get what you are provided. And if that doesn't work for you, then you're really not welcome there, because unfortunately so many organizations, not through their own fault, but just through the fault of the way things have developed, they're looking for numbers. And their numbers determine their success, their numbers determine their funding, whether they'll be able to continue, with programs and different things of that nature. So I I I eventually didn't take it so personally. I just couldn't submit myself to the things that were uncomfortable. And it was
Yeah.
mostly this idea that you're here to serve, like I'm here to serve them, versus they're in service to me because they're getting paid to be in service to, what I need and to help me to accomplish the things that I'm looking to accomplish. And
Yeah. Yeah. You can know that people, the way people treat you is their projection, and still, it's an avalanche. It can, and especially when it reminds us of, you know, the stories that are the weeds that were planted. It's like fertilizer for that one.
absolutely agreed. And so we just did what we could do. And most recently, um, we were invited to stay someplace during the month of July, and it was supposed to be for about 3 weeks. And I spent 4 days moving in. On the fifth day, we were told we needed to leave by 11 o'clock on the sixth day. And it was because the person, they tried to get me to sign a legal document that they hadn't asked me to sign or notified me in advance that I needed to sign. They waited for me and my son to move in and then sent it via email late at night. And when I responded to it, they didn't appreciate it and felt that because I called them out and said, you did not ask me to sign this, and I think it's illegal for you to do it, that because I dared to have feelings about it, they personally came down, and because it was a basement apartment, and told me that I was ungrateful, and that I didn't recognize, because they weren't offering me a roach infested place to stay, that I should have just signed the document. And I was like, hmm. And so at that point, I decided that it was more important for me to focus on eliminating homelessness because it has been a passion of mine, and I could focus on keeping a roof over our heads, um, or I could focus on bringing brain development, nervous system regulation, trauma, and nutrition to the forefront as the basic needs for people who are unhoused, so that we can actually work towards eliminating it and moving people from poverty to prosperity instead of moving people from one level of poverty to another and thinking that that's sufficient. I think a lot of the problems that we have nowadays, we think especially with what we call the housing crisis, the reality is that there's enough housing. It's just that so much of it has become out of the reach of people who are just genuinely living, um, who aren't versed in a particular career that will provide the income that they want or need. And so, but we keep instead of trying to help people advance in their careers, advance in their lives, and be able to gain more finances, we continue to keep people at a level um, of poverty, of either at, on, or below the poverty line. And um, it's just unfortunate because the reason for that is because we literally have a system that is built upon needing people to be unhoused and food insecure for other people to be housed and food secure.
Can you connect those dots for
Yeah.
us? How does that work?
So so one of the things that I did was there's an online resource that you can look up the financial records of nonprofits, because in the United States it's public record. These are public organizations, they serve the public, and so their records are their tax records are of public notice. So took the opportunity to look up um some of the organizations specifically in our area, but also some of the national organizations that are addressing homelessness. And in the city of Raleigh, out of 10 organizations, they are addressing either food or housing insecurity. And of those 10 organizations, there was only one where the executive director and nobody on the board made anything. Other than that, the least amount a person was paid was just under $70,000 a year. The highest was a six-figure salary, around 130K. Um, then I looked at there was national organization that I looked at in particular, and they don't even do direct frontline services. They work more along the lines of the political arena to focus on how to change policy and things of that nature. And the top executive, who within the last year or so has left and been replaced, but they were making over $200,000 a year. And all the top executives um, that were listed were making over $100,000. And I was like, these 6 or 7 people are making $1 million a year, which could put an enormous amount of people in homes, at least in Raleigh, I know it could, in homes for at least a year. And if you're talking like tiny homes or some of these kit homes, you're talking you could put people in homes that belong to them for a lifetime, you know. And so we literally have a system that is built upon the need for people to be unhoused and food insecure because donations come into those organizations. That's how they exist. Federal funding comes into those organizations. City and state and county funding goes into these organizations. And so there's a lot of money generated to keep from because of the goodness of people, but that goodness of people to that supports these organizations ends up keeping more people unhoused and food insecure because the money is not actually spent towards building housing and putting programs into place that will move people from poverty to prosperity, but it actually keeps most of them in poverty.
I see. So where are you living now?
Well, we had a blessing of staying in a hotel last night, but we live in our car right now.
Uh-huh. Can I ask what that's like?
It's an adventure. One of the beautiful things is we wake up to the sunshine, or the rain. It could be a rainy day, but we've had a lot of sunshine. We've lived by the kindness and grace of a lot of people, and I continue to speak out on what needs to be done in order to move people in the direction that our world needs to go. We generally will spend um, a couple of hours at a park. And within Raleigh, there's, you know, more than more than 50 parks. We've been to the vast majority of them. We actually have a map of the park system. And so if we haven't been to a park, then we there's a park that we will choose to go to visit it. So my son and I have both tagged our favorites, you know. There's
Uh,
one in particular that I like and he's like, I don't want to go there. It's not so much fun. So that's been like the best thing because when we're in we tend to stay in and we're very focused on being in the house and doing things and stuff like that, so being outside, especially at this time of year, it has been a blessing for us, I will say, even though most people won't feel that way. We use whatever facilities we can. We have a great parks and rec system, so many of the community centers have showers and things of that nature. We've been blessed with people who will open their homes to us, to use shower facilities and stuff like that. um, and so the biggest challenge has definitely been access to food because we don't have a refrigerator. And so,
mm,
but other than that, it's an amazing adventure. It really is. And I say that only because it's for us it's a choice because I did talk to my son about it. And for us it's a choice. It's a way that I know that I'm able to regulate my nervous system by living in this experience. And that's really important to me because a lot of people, because when you're dealing with the stress of trying to keep a room over your head, especially for me being knowing so much information, but knowing that it takes time to build connection and community and things of that nature. um, I'd rather be spending my time building connections and community and providing information and giving people something else to think about than trying to focus on keeping a hotel room over our head for now. Um, because that the stress of doing that doesn't allow me or my son to live our best lives. It's a very
mm,
stressful and at times it could be very demeaning. Thankfully, we've had a lot of great experiences, but there are the few that that I had just have to sit back and breathe in, like the one that happened in July. Um, at the end of the day, it was never about me not signing the agreement. It was about this young lady's inability to have the confidence to simply ask me. I got uncomfortable once you were here, and if you would just sign this, it would make me feel, can we talk about this? Is this something you're comfortable with? And because she couldn't do that, her trauma response was, I need to control the situation. So I need you out of my house. You're not doing what I need you to do. And it was a reflection of how she was parented, you know? And so I didn't take it personally. Thankfully, because of my training, I could see that. It didn't change the dynamics of the situation, but I knew that if I had signed that, I would always wonder what she felt she could get away with next, you know?
mm-hmm.
And so it wasn't a safe place for my nervous system, even if it was a safe
Yeah,
place for my physical experience.
yeah. Can I ask how old is your son?
He is 7.5.
Uh-huh. Gotcha. Is he in the car with you now?
He's not. He's actually in the hotel room sleeping right now. Thankfully, the window's right behind me, so he can look out and see. But he'll be asleep for at least another hour.
Gotcha. Do you homeschool or is he gonna have to figure out?
I do. We do some child-led learning, and he learned to read when he was 4, and we weren't
Uh,
housed at that time. We were here in North Carolina, And so he continues to amaze people. I call him a great debater. We really shine in the confidence arena, and we're learning how to be humble.
Uh-huh.
But it is my greatest honor and privilege to be his mom and his student.
Wow. Wow. Um, let's shift to talk about solutions.
Hmm.
Um, so I have ideas in my head about what you mean by sort of, trauma response and neural regulation, and I'm thinking about um, polyvagal theory and things like that. Can you kind of paint the picture so that I know that we're talking about the same sorts of things, or
Yeah.
where I need to learn from you?
Absolutely. And I continue to learn from you. When I was going through my parent coach training, when I learned about brain development and nervous system regulation, when I learned about polyvagal theory and this fascinating nerve that runs from the gut to the brain, and then through it was actually through Goodness Lover that I learned more about the microbiome. And there was something in one of their series that said, where one of the speakers was talking about how we come from hunter gatherer. It actually might have been Dr. Gabor Mate, who's like he's one
Hmm.
of my favorites. Um, I think it was him who speaks a lot about our hunter gatherer instincts and how we all live out of our nervous systems first. And we have to tap, if we're ever presented with a situation where we feel threatened, whether that threat is real or perceived, our nervous system will react first, and then our intellect will kick in. And I was
Hmm.
like, just all this information, the idea that we've got this gut, this microbiome that has food that goes into it. It regulates this, as part of the regulation system for this vagus nerve that runs to our brain, that the foods that we eat could alter the way our brain is going to experience a situation. If we have a healthy gut, that our gut will produce, a more regulated nervous system. And for those who don't understand, or might be new to, nervous system regulation with polyvagal theory, which you mentioned, um, Dr. Porges, he breaks our nervous system up into three levels, which is ventral vagal, sympathetic, and dorsal vagal. And the way that I like to use layman's terms is rest and digest. That's where you're able to get some good sleep, your food is able to digest, and you're able to relax, and you're able to, as far as your brain is concerned, you're actually able to tap into that what they call the executive function, or your prefrontal cortex, which is where, like, your reasoning skills, like the things that you use, like your higher brain. And then there's sympathetic, which most people are familiar with as fight or flight. And that's where, when you're presented with a situation, you're either fight or flight. Like, you're going to go head to head against this situation, or you're running as far away from it as you can so you don't have to deal with it. And then there's another one that's called dorsal vagal, and that's like where you're living in your lowest vibration, that when a situation hits, that you freeze, or you get into, they call it freeze or fawn. And from what I understand about fawn is like where you get into this very people pleasing mode, where you're doing whatever
Hmm.
you can to appease everybody else, regardless of how it compromises who you are. But that's your attempt to feel safe,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I was talking to somebody yesterday who called it please and appease,
Mm,
which I'd never heard before. But I thought,
yeah, yes.
yeah.
And so the fascinating thing that I realized is that what we're missing in helping our neighbors who are unhoused is that they are literally living out of the brilliance of their nervous system to keep them safe,
Hmm.
even if we don't like it. So the mental illness, the drugs, the alcohol, the promiscuity, the fighting, even if we don't like it, based on how their brains were developed, that is their attempt to keep themselves safe. when they're living out of their sympathetic nervous system, or worse, their dorsal vagal, that, freeze or fawn, or um or what did you say, the please the peas.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, for most people, the dorsal vagal is just sort of a collapse,
Yeah.
right? It's like a permanent state of depression, wet blanket, right? And it was evolutionarily, when you're in the grip of the predator's mouth, if you go limp and dissociate, either your death will be less bad, or maybe it'll think you've died and it's no longer interested in you. So it's a kind of reaction to imminent destruction.
Powerful that our nervous systems are reacting to something that happened thousands of years ago, millennia,
Yeah.
but here we are experiencing that with entirely new situations, and it all gets developed in a short span of time that we have no control over. We have no control over it unless we're presented with new information to create new habits, which will create new lives. And that's where, you know, that beautiful thing called neuroplasticity, where the brain can change or you can develop these new neural pathways, is so beautiful. But if people aren't given the opportunity to have that information, because that was what it was for me when I took my parent coaching course, is when I was learning this information on how to best navigate life with my son, I learned about me. Like,
Mm.
the few pictures that I could remember of my childhood, I was like, oh my gosh, I get it now, you know? But that didn't change the fact that I still had these tendencies that weren't serving me in the best way. And but I knew I was doing something right, because I have this incredible young man that I'm watching grow and be so different from me and have
Mm.
qualities that I want. And so I focused on doing my very best for him, but also learning from him and saying, okay, well, if he can do that, I can do it too, you know? And because I was a fraidy cat, I was, I lacked confidence. Even if I knew something, I was afraid to speak up. And it still shows up every
Mm.
once in a while now, but I remember just one day, like, just talking to God and saying, I can't do this. And he said, you don't have to be fearless. I just need you to choose to be courageous today. I just need you to
Mm.
choose courage today. And for every opportunity that I've chosen courage, that I've chosen to be courageous, to speak out, it has never worked against me. And so that's what's increased my confidence. And so that's where I know I'm like creating a new neural pathway in my brain that says,
Mm.
no, you're brilliant. You're an expert. You are part of, you are, you're not the exception. You're the rule, and
Mm.
everybody else deserves to have that opportunity to learn about their brilliance, to learn that they're an expert at something. And that came from, I just keep that in mind because Joy Spencer, she's the executive director of an organization called Equity Before Birth. And she speaks to that, we can't look at people and judge them. Everybody is an expert at something. And if they're given the right tools to hone their craft, that in a direction that will serve humanity, we will see their brilliance take flight, you know.
Mm.
But we don't. We judge people. We don't like that you do that. And so instead of building people, we tend to break them.
Mm. Yeah, one of the lessons that Gabor Mate has taught me so beautifully is really that every behavior makes sense. That everything, no matter what someone's doing, no matter how much I don't like it, matter how much it might be hurting me, it's their attempt to take some medicine to deal with their own trauma.
Yes.
And
And
it's
go ahead.
Yeah. Well, it's hard, at that point, and now I'm doing another form of learning around, coherence therapy, which takes that to, another level, sort of, in terms of my understanding of the brain. And one of the things I've actually struggled to give up or hold on to is judgment. It's like there's something very nice about being able to judge people and dismiss them that makes my life easier. And I'm like, I don't want to necessarily, not every part of me wants to give that up. Like, if I can judge people for being impoverished or homeless or panhandling then it's not my responsibility. Like, well, something happened.
Absolutely. I totally respect that. And I think what's important is that it's okay for us to judge. It's just like it's okay for us to be angry. It's what we do with that, you know? It's what we do with that. Can we sit with that and honor it and say, where does this come from? And what need of
Mm,
mine isn't being met because I'm seeing that? And because at Jai, we teach something different. We teach something very similar to what Dr. Gabor Mate is saying. Um, and we say that every behavior, every emotion is an attempt to get a need met, you know, whether, whether it's, elation, um, whether it's elation or devastation, like every behavior. When a child is running around and giggling and happy, um, that there's a need behind that behavior. They want to celebrate, they want to connect, and stuff like that. Or they're connecting with you and their need is for joy and happiness. But when that child is throwing something, we want to be like, that's bad, you shouldn't do that. So many of us, because of how we were trained, it's really, we are dealing with our subconscious conditioning, and our subconscious conditioning is literally a threat and often an enemy to the conscious person that we're trying to become. Because when we get that information and we want to live this new life, when we get thrown into situations that make us feel uncomfortable, we automatically go back to that subconscious conditioning, that fight or flight response, And so I just want to support you and say judgment is not bad. We all do it.
mm.
It's what we then do with that judgment that matters.
Yeah, I'm learning from a therapist named Alan Parry out of the UK, and he talks about our invisible twin. Like, each of us, like, I want to behave in this way in this situation. I want to be loving and confident and kind and generous. And there's it's like an invisible twin that says, no, that's too dangerous. That is going to get you in trouble. That's unacceptable. And until we get to know the invisible twin and what it's scared of and really befriend it and honor it for, the warnings that it's giving us, and really look at, what did we learn? Like, what was our data set, right? You had a childhood data set. I had a childhood data set. Speaking for myself, my family of origin was not at all like the world I live in now, but I'm still operating on those rules. And the only thing I can do is try to make that twin visible and say, okay, so what really, you know, is going on here?
No, oh my goodness. Yes, that's a great way to speak about it. Um, there's somebody else who speaks on it, and I can't remember his name. I know he does IFF, and I think it's like interfamily
Richard
systems or
Schwartz.
something. Yes, yes,
Dick Schwartz, yeah,
yeah,
internal family systems. Yeah,
right.
that was my introduction to this world.
Yeah, because he talks about that other person, and like letting that person come through and speak and what are they saying and stuff like that. And yeah, that's our subconscious conditioning, wanting to keep us safe, like, no, your parents said this, and we don't even realize that that's what it's coming from. Like the vast majority of the world does not realize that's what we operate out of. We don't operate out of our conscious minds and we don't even, half the time we don't even know when we feel threatened. You know, like we just,
Yeah.
you know, because we're so
Yeah.
disconnected from our bodies.
I
And
don't I don't like to feel fear. I'd rather feel judgment, anger, rage, superiority. Those feel damn good.
and it's
That's
important that
dessert.
you experience that and claim that and be like, yeah, okay, now what's the need behind that? Is it because I was always made to feel inferior? You know, was I always
Hmm.
judged? And so now I have the power to make that judgment. You know, where is this? What's the need that is manifesting in those moments for yourself? You know, well, I've worked so hard to get myself to this position, and I did it all by myself. So they need to pull up their bootstraps and do it too. You know, and
Hmm.
so it's real. You know, we have this battle that's constantly going on, and for me that's where I want to make help people to get to the point where their subconscious conditioning and their conscious mind can live in harmony with one another, you know, that they
Hmm.
can honor one another. And the more that we can help people develop new neural pathways, the more that is possible. And then the subconscious conditioning can become more along the lines of our conscious conditioning, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So let's. I have to jump off a little bit before the top of the hour for a thing. I do want to have more conversations with you, but for now, I'd love to hear about the homesteads. Like, what is that about, and what's your vision for what could be?
Yeah, thank you. Um, so a homestead is usually an off grid. You know, people live away from the city, they live off the land and things of that nature. And so my vision is to create a space where we minimize the utility payments for people. So rain catchment systems, solar panels. Actually, like the thing that I want the most is a green powerhouse. I don't know if you're familiar with the need to grow in Michael Smith. Oh my goodness.
No.
So Michael Smith created this structure, and it is zero carbon, I want to say. You can grow food inside, like up to a quarter acre of food, and it could power like 100 homes. And it is completely green energy. And it's for sale for $1 million right now, which I don't have, but that's okay. Like, but I see this as like the green energy of the future. You have to see this. Uh, it is just amazing. But I learned about it in The Need to Grow, the movie that Rob Herring from Earth Conscious Films put out in conjunction with the Food Revolution Network. So that would be ideal. But the idea for the homestead, in particular, for the way it would help people, is first it would put them in home. We would have both communal and personal gardens so that people can learn how to grow food so that they can become food secure. Outside of that, it would also team up with the program that I mentioned at the beginning of the conversation called How Does Your Garden Grow? So they're not just learning how to grow food, but they're learning about the garden of their mind.
Hmm.
And so they can determine, okay, I know this is in there. I know this is in there. For so many people, anger is a huge component. And so we don't want people to just try to rip out anger, because anger means that there's a need that needs to be met. But we want people to be able to tap into that need and find out what's behind the anger, you know, and where is it stemming from? Is that anger actually stemming from this moment, this exact experience, or
Hmm.
excuse me, is it stemming from some other experience, and this is kind of the culmination where you're tired of feeling this way because you never addressed it before, you know? And so there's that. And then another aspect of it is that people get paid for this experience, because when you're unhoused, um, one of the biggest barriers to employment is when you don't have an employment record. or well, what were you doing during this time? And then you've got this question. So if we can help people get established, we can pay them for the work that they're doing. Then the other thing that is so important to me is, and is actually kind of the foundation, is that people keep a gratitude journal for the first 6 weeks, at least for the first 6 weeks. And then I'm looking at other things that they can transition into to be able to continue keeping a journal. But the importance of the gratitude journal in particular, which is writing down 5 things every day, focusing on being grateful for things that are challenging to you, minimally being grateful for things that you anticipate, and also not repeating anything for at least 2 weeks. But the idea is that if you want to change your life, you've got to change your mind. And that's not just about making a different decision. It is literally about changing how your mind operates. And that's one of the ways to create a new neural pathway of looking at your life from a more positive perspective, because we are not designed to look at things positively naturally. And if we then have the influx of our subconscious conditioning where our parents were always, don't do that, don't stop, blah, blah, then we are generally trained to look for the negative. So we have to retrain our brains. We literally have to retrain or train our brains to think of things in a more positive light. And so once we can look at our situations positively, then we can believe that there is a possibility for change. And the idea is to move people from surviving to thriving, from poverty to prosperity, internally and externally. Um, Another aspect that for me is extremely important is mentorship, that everybody has a mentor, somebody who can see their brilliance despite their bank account and hold a vision of life beyond homelessness for them. Anybody who is endeavoring to do anything usually has a coach. Plant-based coaching certification. You're trying to move to, more of a plant-based lifestyle. So you're going to get a coach. If, you're going to get a coach, a life coach. You're going to get a business coach. Why aren't there mentors to help people move out of homelessness? It doesn't make any sense, because people don't expect people to move out of poverty. And so that is
Well,
another
it's just, and
important
it's, and it's and it's really hard to monetize helping people who don't have lots of money.
and that's the thing that fascinates me, because of all the things, like, we throw out this thing, hurt people, you know, but I also know that hurt people help people. I heard
Mm.
somebody say that. And the reason why hurt people is because they've been hurt, but a lot of hurt people have also been helped, and they want to be helpful. And so when we can help people move from poverty to prosperity, that's where the monetization comes in, because they'll then turn around and pour back into the organization that supported them in that endeavor, or they'll pay it forward into the world by creating something beautiful that the world is missing, or they'll be able to support something that is already happening that needs the support and doesn't have it. We are missing a key component of not helping people move from poverty to prosperity, especially internally, so that they then can give their gifts to the world and be a blessing to other people.
Mm. One of the things that I find fascinating about your approach and so beautiful is you're combining sort of personal responsibility uh, with systems change. That you're not saying it's all your state if you change, which can come across as blaming. Like, well, if you just change your state, then you could, manifest riches, right? And you're also not saying we just have to spread wealth more equitably, or they're both necessary steps but not sufficient. You're taking a very systems approach to this issue.
Thank you. I take that as a huge compliment, because I took a workshop earlier this year that was on systems thinking, and I didn't realize it, but one of the words that they use that I'd never heard of is called a mental model. And this process was already in place, but what I realized is that I have a different mentality about how to look at people. And it's simply the very first, there's 7 different things in the mental model that I'm creating, but the one thing that's the most important for me is that everybody comes into this world with infinite intrinsic value. that they die with that same value and that nothing in between those two dates changes their value. And so if we can help people live up to, first of all, to recognize that they are of value and then live up and exceed their value, and then they give those gifts to the world, which makes the world a better place, then we create a better world. And that simply, the simple way that I use is that I'm blasting bushels off of their lights. People have had all these buckets put on their lights, and it's just time it's time to blast them off. It's time to blast them off.
So I gotta run, but can I press you to say we can do another one soon?
Yeah, absolutely. This was
So,
fun. I'm
okay,
so
is there so much?
excited and honored. Thank you.
How can people find out more? How is there, do you have an online presence? How can people help?
I'm working on it. I think the best way to reach out to me is via Instagram. If you go to my Instagram bio, I have a digital business card there. Some people use another service, but I found that my digital business card is actually the best way to reach me. And on it, if you click on my digital business card, it literally has everything I'm doing. It has fundraisers, it has my personal contact information. If people want to reach out directly to me, you can email me at kai.timetoluv, because the name of my business is actually called Love Enterprises Present LLC. But it's kai.timetolove@gmail.com. And just really quickly about Love Enterprises, love is an acronym. It stands for learn your value, and people who are really smart will realize that your doesn't start with you, it starts with a Y. So I use a little phonetic spelling, but our motto is building the village, raising the child. And so literally we are anticipating building physical villages as well as personal villages, and raising all children, because we are all children of God. And all of us have an inner child that still needs to be raised.
So when people are following you, are there things they can do to help? Are there actions to take, or?
I would say I'm hosting some master classes if people want to get involved, and just start to change their mentality. I think the first thing is, if you don't have a mentality of the infinite intrinsic value of everybody, that's a great place to start. I feel like all the work that needs to be done can be done personally. I do have a fundraiser. People are more than welcome to contribute to that. I also have I would invite people to keep a gratitude journal, just so that they can begin to recognize their own worth if they are struggling with that. And also, if you're involved in any way with the homeless community in your area, then I would just say, reach out, say hello, sit down and have a conversation with somebody, and realize that we are all part of nature and that we're all connected to one another. So when we dismiss somebody, then we are really losing a piece of ourselves. And so if we can just reach out and give some goodness to everybody as this is developing and growing, then it'll be easier to create solutions where all across the world, because this will go global.
All right. May it be so. Momma Kai, Carolyn Sanders, thank you so much for all the work you're doing. I'm sorry I'm not your neighbor anymore. We'll have to meet up when I head back to take care of stuff. I'll put the contact information on the digital business card in the show notes so people can find it easily. And we're going to talk again soon, I hope.
Absolutely. Thank you again. I'm so honored that I've had this opportunity. It just like serendipity that in the very last class that we shared together, in the very last breakout room, we were able to connect. So I'm excited for the future.
Yep. The honor is mine as well. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Continued success, Howie.
And you. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Today's show notes are available at plantyourself.com/562. So what's going on here? I've discovered a new sport. I haven't yet played it. It's called padel, like paddle, P-A with an accent, padel maybe, D-E-L. And it kind of looks like a cross between tennis, racquetball, squash, paddle tennis, which I've seen played in the U.S. many years ago, and pickleball. And I was just walking one day and just saw a bunch of people playing, and I just like put my nose against the fence like a little kid and like, oh my gosh, I really want to learn how to play that. So haven't gotten my padel yet. I gotta take a train to Villanova y el Geltrú, about 6-minute drive south, to pick up a paddle, and then I'm going to start playing. And I'm sure I'm going to suck for a while, but I played paddle sports a lot, racket and paddle sports as a kid. Racquetball, squash, tennis. When I was really young, just paddleball with the old wooden paddles with the holes in them on a single cement wall. So I think it's in my muscle memory and possibly in my genetics as well. So I'm really looking forward to that. I'm still playing Ultimate, although I think we're going to be pausing the Sunday workout, so I may have to travel farther north up into Barcelona to keep my hand in. Got a fiddle. I don't know if I mentioned that last time. I bought a cheap violin, been practicing a little bit, and just slowly getting into the swing of life here, partly as an expat and partly through meeting people and just weaving myself into this new community. It's really exciting, really fun. And if you listen to Momma Kai talking earlier, in this podcast about what an amazing day in paradise, I got to say, it is for me too. And it's sometimes hard for me to embrace that. Like, I kind of want to downplay it a little bit, but the truth is I am living in an amazing place and having a fabulous time. And I wish that for everyone. So let's all go out and make the world one in which that's possible. So thanks you again for listening, and be well, my friends.